lambs. They were screaming.
The Silence of the Lambs, 1991, 20 Weird Facts. You didn't know, The Silence of the Lambs didn't just win 5 Oscars. It crawled under Hollywood's skin and never left. But behind the iconic mask, the fava beans, and that voice, nothing was simple. The lead role almost went to someone else. One actor refused to be in the same room as Anthony Hopkins, and a single improvised line, it became the most quoted moment in cinema history. These are 20 weird facts about the Silence of the Lambs, and buried in the darkness, a moth that wasn't supposed to be there at all. Clarice, have the lambs stopped screaming? Number 1. Gene Hackman didn't just turn down the role of Hannibal Lecter. He owned the rights to the book, developed the project, planned to direct it himself, and then walked away. He'd optioned Thomas Harris's novel years before the film was made, envisioning himself in the lead. But as pre-production began, something shifted. He read the script again, studied the character deeper, and realized he couldn't do it. The violence disturbed him. The psychological darkness felt too real, too close. Hackman had built a career playing tough guys, anti-heroes, men who lived in moral gray zones. But Lecter was different. Lecter wasn't conflicted. He was pure, calculated evil wrapped in charm and intelligence. Hackman told friends he didn't want his face associated with that kind of monster. He didn't want audiences to see him that way. So he sold the rights, stepped back, and let someone else descend into that mind. Without Hackman's exit, Anthony Hopkins never gets the call, and cinema loses one of its greatest villains. Number 2. Jodie Foster wasn't the first choice. Michelle Pfeiffer was. The studio wanted her badly, a bigger name, a proven box office draw. She read the script, loved the writing, respected the craft, but said no. The material was too dark, too disturbing. She didn't want to live in that world for months. Meg Ryan was approached next. She also declined, citing similar concerns about the graphic nature of the story. Then came Jodie Foster, fresh off The Accused, unafraid of difficult roles, and she said yes without hesitation. She didn't just take the part, she became Clarice Starling. Foster saw something the others didn't. She saw a woman fighting to be heard in a male-dominated world, using her intelligence as her only weapon. She saw vulnerability as strength, not weakness. And Pfeiffer, years later, admitted it was one of the biggest regrets of her career. She'd turned down a role that would define a generation. Number 3. Anthony Hopkins prepared for the role by studying FBI tapes of real serial killers. He listened to Charles Manson, watched interviews with Ted Bundy, absorbed their cadence, their pauses, their unnerving calm. But the voice he ultimately used didn't come from any of them. It came from Katharine Hepburn. Hopkins blended her clipped, aristocratic tone with the cold precision of HAL 9000 from 2001, A Space Odyssey. The result was something entirely new, unsettling, impossible to place. A voice that sounded human but felt wrong. It had culture, refinement, even warmth at times. But underneath it all was something mechanical, something that didn't quite connect to human emotion the way it should. Director Jonathan Demme heard it once during rehearsals and knew they had something terrifying. He told Hopkins, "Don't change a thing." That's him. Number 4. Hopkins and Foster barely spoke off camera. It wasn't animosity, it was intentional. Foster wanted to maintain the fear, the distance, the power imbalance between Clarice and Lecter. So they avoided each other between takes, kept conversations minimal, never socialized. Hopkins respected the choice and leaned into it. He'd stare at her from across the set, unblinking, staying in character even when cameras weren't rolling. Foster later said it was one of the most uncomfortable shoots of her career, but also the most effective. She never knew what Hopkins would do next, never felt safe in his presence, and that uncertainty bled into every frame. The tension you see on screen, that's real. Two actors refusing to break the spell, committed to making each other as uncomfortable as possible for the sake of the story. Number 5. The iconic line, "I ate his liver with some fava beans and a nice Chianti," wasn't just a creepy food pairing. Some fans and clinicians have speculated that it was a medical clue. Patients on MAOIs, a class of antidepressants used to treat violent psychiatric patients, are forbidden from consuming liver, fava beans, and red wine because the combination can be fatal. Lecter was telling Clarice, in coded language, that he was off his medication. He wasn't being controlled. He was fully, dangerously lucid. Most viewers missed it, but psychiatrists in the audience caught it immediately, and it made the scene even more chilling. Thomas Harris, who wrote the novel, was meticulous about medical accuracy. He wanted Lecter to be brilliant enough to hide messages in plain sight, to communicate on multiple levels simultaneously. It's a perfect example of how the film rewards close attention and repeat viewings. Number 6. The slurping sound Hopkins made after the Chianti line. That wasn't in the script. He improvised it during the take, a quick, wet, animalistic noise that made everyone on set freeze. Jodie Foster's reaction, the slight flinch. That's genuine. She wasn't expecting it. Demi kept the take because it was too perfect, too unsettling to cut. Hopkins later said he didn't plan it. It just came out, a spontaneous choice that felt right in the moment. It was Lecter dropping the mask for a split second, revealing the predator underneath the sophistication. That single sound became one of the most imitated moments in film history. And Hopkins did it once, never rehearsed, never planned. Pure instinct. Number 7. The moth on the movie poster wasn't just a moth, it was a skull. Specifically, a photograph by Philippa Halsman called In Voluptas Mors, featuring 7 naked women arranged to form a skull. The image was placed on the moth's back, a hidden symbol of death and desire. Most people see the poster and register something's off, something's wrong, but can't pinpoint why. That's intentional. The design team wanted the marketing to feel as unsettling as the film itself. They wanted people to stare at the poster and feel uncomfortable without understanding why. The skull made of bodies represents Buffalo Bill's twisted psychology, his desire to transform, to become something else by wearing the skin of women. It's brilliant, disturbing visual storytelling that works on a subconscious level. Number 8. The actual death's head hawk moth used in the film was dead. They couldn't get a live one to cooperate on set, so the production team used a deceased specimen and manipulated it with wires and air jets. For the scene where the moth crawls out of the victim's throat, they used a combination of puppetry and CGI enhancement. But in close-ups, that's a real dead moth, positioned and repositioned dozens of times. The effects team spent weeks perfecting the moth's movement, making it look alive and purposeful. Crew members started calling it the most famous corpse in cinema. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. A dead thing manipulated to seem alive, in a film about a killer who wears the dead to feel human. Number 9. The lambs Clarice describes in her monologue, the ones she tried to save as a child, were never in the original novel's dialogue the same way. Jodie Foster and screenwriter Ted Talley expanded that moment, making it the emotional core of the entire film. It's why the title resonates. It's why we remember her, not just as an FBI agent, but as someone haunted by the innocent she couldn't save. And in the end, that's what the film is really about. Not the monsters we hunt, but the ones we carry inside. The Silence of the Lambs didn't just scare audiences. It changed them. It proved horror could be art, that terror could be intelligent, that a film could crawl inside your mind and never leave. Number 10. Ted Levine's dance scene, the infamous "would you fuck" moment, was his idea. It wasn't in the script. He pitched it to Demme as a way to show Buffalo Bill's fractured psyche, his desperate attempt to become someone else. Demme was hesitant, worried it would be too much, too exploitative. But Levine insisted, choreographed it himself, and performed it in one take. The crew was silent afterward, not because it was funny, because it was deeply, disturbingly sad. Levine didn't play Buffalo Bill as a monster. He played him as a broken human being, someone so damaged by rejection and self-hatred that he'd rather destroy himself and others than face who he really was. That scene is uncomfortable because it forces us to see the humanity in the horror. Number 11. The FBI gave the production full access to Quantico, allowing them to film inside the actual behavioral science unit. Real agents walked through the background of scenes. The set designed for Clarice's training sequences used actual FBI equipment, actual case files with names redacted, actual crime scene photos. Jodie Foster spent days with real agents, learning their mannerisms, their speech patterns, the way they carried themselves. One agent, John Douglas, the real-life inspiration for the character Jack Crawford, consulted on the film extensively. He taught Foster how to hold herself in interrogations, how to read body language, how to maintain control in situations designed to intimidate her. The authenticity you feel, that's because it's real. The FBI saw the film as an opportunity to show the world what profiling actually looked like, beyond the Hollywood myths. Number 12. Hannibal Lecter is on screen for only 16 minutes. In a 2-hour film, Hopkins appears for less than 15% of the runtime, yet he won the Academy Award for Best Actor, one of the shortest performances ever to win the category. His presence is so commanding, so unforgettable, that audiences remember him as the center of the entire film. That's not editing, that's pure, terrifying charisma. Hopkins understood that less is more. He didn't choose scenery or overplay the menace. He stayed still, spoke softly, and let the audience come to him. And when they did, they couldn't look away. Number 13. The glass cell wasn't bulletproof. It was plexiglass, chosen specifically because it distorts reflections and creates a sense of unease. But it also meant Hopkins and Foster could hear each other clearly. No audio separation. Every breath, every whisper, every pause, they experienced it together in real time. Demme refused to shoot their scenes with traditional shot-reverse shot coverage. He filmed them straight on, breaking the 180-degree rule, forcing the audience into direct eye contact with Lecter. It's why those scenes feel so invasive. Number 14. The film was shot in chronological order, a rarity in Hollywood. Demme wanted Foster's performance to evolve naturally, to show Clarice's growing confidence and trauma as the story progressed. It added weeks to the schedule and cost the production significantly more. But the result is a character arc you can see in her eyes, in her posture, in the way she holds herself by the final scene. She's not the same person who walked into that basement. Number 15. Anthony Hopkins based Lecter's stillness on reptiles. He studied how snakes and lizards move, how they can remain motionless for long periods, then strike without warning. He practiced holding perfectly still between takes, barely blinking, barely breathing. It unnerved everyone. Crew members started avoiding his eye line. One camera operator requested a different assignment because he couldn't handle being that close to Hopkins in character. Number 16. The film's original ending was darker. In early cuts, Clarice doesn't save Catherine Martin in time. Buffalo Bill kills her, and Clarice arrives too late, standing over the body in silence. Test audiences hated it. They felt betrayed, emotionally destroyed. Demi reshot the ending, giving Clarice her victory, but he kept the darkness everywhere else. The version we have is the compromise between art and audience expectation. Number 17. Jodie Foster did her own stunts in the final confrontation. No double, no safety wires. She insisted on being thrown into walls, dragged across floors, choked by Ted Levine's hands. She wanted the physicality to be real, the exhaustion to be genuine. By the end of the shoot, she was covered in bruises, her voice was hoarse, and she could barely stand. Demi offered to use a stunt double for the final shots. She refused. Number 18. The film was released on Valentine's Day, 1991. A horror thriller about a cannibal and a serial killer who skins women, released on the most romantic day of the year. The studio thought it would bomb. Instead, it became a cultural phenomenon, playing in theaters for months, eventually grossing over $270 million worldwide. The counter-programming worked because audiences were desperate for something real, something that didn't insult their intelligence. Number 19. The Silence of the Lambs is one of only 3 films to win the Big 5 Oscars: Best Picture, Best Director, Best Actor, Best Actress, and Best Adapted Screenplay. The other 2 are It Happened One Night, 1934, and One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, 1975. No horror film before or since has achieved that level of recognition. The Academy didn't just respect it, they couldn't ignore it. Number 20. Anthony Hopkins has said he rarely watches his own performances. Not at the premiere, not at the Oscars, not usually. He said once he's finished with a character, he doesn't want to see it again. He doesn't want to analyze it, critique it, or relive it. Hannibal Lecter was something he created, inhabited, and then left behind. And maybe that's the most unsettling fact of all. The man who gave us cinema's most unforgettable monster has no interest in remembering him. The Silence of the Lambs didn't just scare audiences, it changed them. It proved horror could be art, that terror could be intelligent, that a film could crawl inside your mind and never leave. If this one still haunts you, drop a comment. Tell us what fact made you rewind. And subscribe, because we're just getting started. Because in a world full of monsters, the scariest ones are the ones who seem perfectly human.